The sound was wrong. That was the first thing that cut through my Saturday morning. The sharp scrape of metal on metal, deliberate and impatient, coming from my driveway. It was barely past 7. The sun was still low, the neighborhood quiet in that way only suburban HOAs ever get, where everything feels staged and controlled. I stepped out of my garage with a mug of coffee still steaming in my hand and froze. A woman in a neon safety vest was bent over my driver's door like she owned it. Her back was to me, clipboard tucked under one arm, a massive ring of keys clanking in her hand as she jammed one after another into my car lock. She twisted hard, yanked, cursed under her breath, then moved on to the next key. The metal shriek echoed down the street. I cleared my throat. She spun around fast, eyes sharp, already annoyed. "Why won't this master key open your car?" she snapped, as if the problem was me. She held up the key ring like a badge. "This is a violation." That sentence shattered whatever calm I had left, not because she said it, but because of how confidently she said it. She went right back to my car, forcing another key into the lock. It bent slightly. She didn't notice or didn't care. She twisted harder. Snap. The key broke clean off in the cylinder. Her face flushed red. "All vehicles must allow emergency HOA access," she said loudly, as if narrating for an invisible audience. "Your lock has been illegally modified." I didn't answer. I just watched. On the 6th failed key, her confidence cracked. She stepped back, breathing harder now, then yanked her phone out like a weapon. "I'm calling this in," she announced. She hit 911. "There's a suspicious vehicle with tampered locks," she told the dispatcher, pacing my driveway, "and the resident is obstructing an official safety inspection." She pointed at me like I was already in handcuffs. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that this phone call was about to destroy the fantasy she'd been living in for over a year. But to understand how we got there, you need to know what kind of neighborhood I'd moved into, and who she really was. 6 months earlier, I'd arrived in Willowbrook Estates with one goal: quiet, no drama, no attention, just a clean reset. After years of a job that thrived on chaos, I wanted normal. I wanted to come home, park my car, drink my coffee, and be left alone. Willowbrook looked perfect on paper. Tree-lined streets, identical mailboxes, lawns trimmed to the inch. The realtor described it as well-managed. What she meant was obsessed with control. Within the first week I noticed her. She wore that fluorescent vest everywhere. Morning walks, HOA meetings, even neighborhood barbecues. Always the clipboard, always the keys. The jangling sound alone was enough to announce her presence 3 houses away. People stiffened when they saw her coming. Conversations ended abruptly. Garage doors closed a little faster. Her name was Karen Ashford, and she had appointed herself something she called the Vehicle Safety Coordinator. That position didn't exist, but she printed business cards anyway. Karen believed, truly believed, that she had authority over every car in Willowbrook Estates. She claimed the HOA required emergency access readiness, which meant she needed to be able to open any vehicle at any time. Fire risk, security risk, community compliance. She had an explanation ready for everything. And she had keys, a lot of keys. Some neighbors whispered that she'd gotten into their cars before. Nothing major. Loose change missing, paperwork rearranged, garage door openers gone. Most people brushed it off. Nobody wanted to accuse the woman who walked around like she owned the place. In an HOA, perception is power. I didn't know any of this at first. I kept my head down, smiled politely, declined conversations. I didn't attend the meetings. I parked my car in my own driveway and went about my life. That, apparently, was my first mistake. The first time Karen approached me, she didn't yell. She smiled. Tight, controlled, rehearsed. "Just doing a routine compliance check," she said, glancing at my vehicle. "I'll need to verify access." I told her no. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes did. "Refusing a safety inspection can result in penalties," she said. I thanked her for the information and went inside. From that day on, she watched my house. Not obviously, not like someone trying to intimidate, more like someone studying a problem they hadn't solved yet. She took notes. She lingered near my driveway. She asked neighbors questions about my schedule, my car, whether I worked from home. And then came that Saturday morning. Back in the driveway, Karen was still pacing, still talking loudly into her phone, still crafting a narrative where she was the hero and I was the problem. "Yes, tampered locks," she said. possibly impersonating a federal vehicle. I believe this may be intentional. Federal vehicle. That was new. She ended the call with a satisfied nod and crossed her arms, standing squarely in front of my car like she was guarding a crime scene. "Police are on their way," she said. "I suggest you cooperate." I took a slow sip of my coffee. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. "Do you have anything showing you're authorized to do this?" I asked. She scoffed and flipped her clipboard around, revealing a laminated certificate that looked like it had been printed at a library. Bold letters across the top read, "Vehicle Safety Coordinator, Willowbrook Estates." She held it inches from my face. "I have full authority," she said. "And your interference is being documented." I nodded once. "Okay." That response confused her more than an argument would have. She expected shouting, fear, compliance. What she got was silence. Neighbors had started emerging now. Doors opened, curtains moved, phones appeared. HOA drama was better than morning television. 10 minutes later, the sound of sirens drifted down the street. Karen straightened her vest, adjusted her clipboard, and practiced the look she must have used 100 times before. The look of righteous authority. 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, professional, neutral, scanning the scene. Karen didn't wait for them to speak. "I'm the Vehicle Safety Coordinator," she announced, marching forward. "This resident has illegally modified his vehicle locks to prevent HOA emergency access. He's obstructing an inspection." One of the officers glanced at my car, then at me. Then his expression changed, just slightly. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I replied. Karen noticed that shift. Her eyes narrowed. "These locks are tampered," she insisted. "My master keys work on every compliant vehicle in this community." The officer looked at the broken key still stuck in my door. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "do you have documentation authorizing you to enter private vehicles?" Karen launched into her speech again, faster this time. Titles, safety, emergency protocols, community authority. The other officer stepped aside with me briefly, quietly, calmly. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but I'd like an incident number for this call." That request made Karen snap her head around. "Why would you need that?" she demanded. The officer didn't answer her. He radioed it in. Karen's confidence began to crumble, but she doubled down anyway. "This isn't over," she said loudly, scanning the watching neighbors. "Real authority will hear about this." She didn't realize it yet, but real authority already had. And she'd just handed them everything they needed. That morning ended quietly. The officers left. Karen retreated to her house, muttering about conspiracies and cover-ups. Neighbors whispered. Some apologized, others avoided eye contact. I went back inside and finished my coffee. But I knew something had changed. People like Karen don't stop when they're embarrassed. They escalate. And I had a feeling this was only the beginning. The neighborhood didn't go back to normal after the police left. It tried to, but the tension lingered like humidity after a storm. People waved a little too politely. Conversations stopped when I stepped outside. And Karen, she disappeared for the rest of the day, which told me more than if she'd stayed. When someone like her goes quiet, it isn't reflection. It's planning. By Monday morning, the first envelope appeared in my mailbox. No postage, hand-delivered, thick paper, official-looking font. I stood in my kitchen reading it twice, then a third time, just to be sure I wasn't missing the joke. According to Karen's document, I was being fined for unauthorized vehicle modification, failure to comply with emergency access protocols, and something called obstruction of community safety enforcement. The total came to $350, due within 10 days, or additional penalties would apply. There was even a payment address, her address. I didn't react. I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront her. I made a copy, dated it, and slid it into a folder. That folder would get very thick, very fast. Over the next week, the violations multiplied, each one more creative than the last. My vehicle was now allegedly a commercial asset. My window tint was non-residential. The way I parked, straight, inside my own driveway, was sud. Only a safety hazard. Karen started showing up again too, always at a distance, standing at the edge of the sidewalk, writing things down when I came or went. Once I caught her taking photos of my car with her phone. She didn't hide it. She wanted me to see. Neighbors started approaching me quietly. "She did this to us too," one man whispered while checking over his shoulder. "We just paid it. Didn't want trouble." Another woman told me Karen had threatened to put a lien on their house over lawn decorations. Someone else mentioned missing change from their car months ago, a garage door remote that vanished and never turned up. Individually, it all sounded petty. Together, it formed a pattern. The real shift happened when Karen crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. It was early Wednesday morning when I opened my front door and found my car immobilized. A bright orange steering wheel lock clamped onto the tire, decorated with stickers reading "Community Impound" and "Authorized Enforcement Only." A laminated notice was zip-tied to the handle. Karen was standing across the street, arms crossed, watching. "You can't do that," I said evenly. She smiled. "Not tight this time. Satisfied." "I already did," she replied. "Release fee is $50. Daily storage starts tomorrow." I took out my phone and started recording. That wiped the smile right off her face. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Documenting," I said. "Just so we're clear, are you claiming legal authority to seize private property?" She puffed up, exactly as I expected. As the duly appointed vehicle safety coordinator, she said loudly, "I am authorized to immobilize non-compliant vehicles that pose a risk to community safety." "Who appointed you?" I asked. "The HOA recognizes my expertise," she snapped. "Do you have that in writing?" She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. "I don't need to explain myself to you," she said. "You're already under review." That was the moment she sealed it. I didn't remove the lock myself. I called local police, calmly explained that someone had placed a device on my vehicle without consent, and requested an officer. When they arrived, Karen tried the same routine again. Same titles, same laminated certificate, same confidence. It didn't work. The lock came off. The officer warned her, clearly, that she had no authority to touch other people's vehicles, that doing so again could result in charges. Karen nodded like she understood. She didn't. That night, I installed cameras. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Motion activated, properly positioned, legally placed. By the weekend, they were already paying off. The footage showed Karen making rounds late at night, walking the streets slowly, testing car doors, jiggling handles, occasionally leaning inside when something gave. Once you see it on video, there's no ambiguity, no misunderstanding, just intent. I started reaching out to neighbors again, this time with proof. People who'd been afraid to talk before suddenly weren't. Stories poured out, missing documents, rearranged glove compartments, items taken by mistake and never returned. Someone mentioned their garage door opening unexpectedly once. Another recalled tools being moved. This wasn't HOA nonsense anymore. It was criminal behavior wrapped in a fluorescent vest. At that point, it was time to stop pretending I was just another homeowner. I contacted my supervisor, explained the situation, and shared the evidence. His reaction was immediate. "This isn't a neighborhood dispute," he said. "This is escalation against a federal employee." That detail mattered, not as a threat, but as a jurisdictional reality. False reports, impersonation, harassment, and unauthorized access all carry WIG. When they crossed that line, Karen crossed it again on Monday. This time, the harassment went public. She created a neighborhood Facebook group titled Willowbrook Safety Watch. Within hours, she'd posted photos of my vehicle, my house, and captions warning residents about unverified federal activity. Comments spiraled. Some neighbors defended me. Karen responded to every single one, accusing them of being complicit. She named me, tagged my address, claimed she was working with authorities. She wasn't, but she thought she was close. The fake notices kept coming, so did the lies. Karen told people I was under investigation, that I'd threatened her, that she'd barely escaped retaliation. None of it was true. All of it was documented. The moment that changed everything came late one evening when a neighbor knocked on my door shaking. "She's been in my car," he said. I caught her. He didn't have video, but I did. When we checked the footage together, we saw it clearly. Karen unlocking his car, leaning inside, taking photos of paperwork, slipping something into her vest pocket. That was the point of no return. I forwarded everything. Timestamps, clips, statements, to the appropriate channels. The response was calm, professional, and very clear. Let her continue, I was told. She's building the case herself. Karen, unaware, escalated again. 2 days later, she appeared at my door with 2 other people I'd never seen before. "We're here for an official inspection," she announced, clipboard front and center. I didn't argue. I didn't refuse. I stepped aside. "Go ahead," I said. She smiled like she D1. What she didn't realize was that from the moment she stepped onto my property, everything she said, and everything she did, was being recorded. And the more she talked, the worse it got for her. By the time she left that night, flustered and angry, she'd admitted to authority she didn't have, actions she wasn't allowed to take, and decisions that would be very easy to prove false. Karen thought she was tightening her grip. In reality, she was wrapping the rope herself, and she still wasn't done. By the time Karen walked away from my porch that night, I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was documenting a pattern that had gone far beyond neighborhood harassment. This wasn't about control issues or an overzealous HOA volunteer. This was about someone who believed genuinely that pretending to have authority made it real. And people like that don't stop on their own. The cameras filled in the gaps quickly. Once I started reviewing the footage day by day instead of incident by incident, the scope became clear. Karen wasn't randomly wandering the neighborhood. She had a routine: early mornings, late evenings, always when most people were inside. She moved methodically, testing doors, checking handles, lingering longer at some vehicles than others. What stood out most wasn't just that she was getting into cars. It was what she did once she was inside. She didn't rummage. She didn't rush. She opened glove compartments carefully, photographed documents, straightened things back up. If she took something, it was small. Change, a remote, paperwork. Enough to matter, not enough to be immediately noticed. That's how she'd gotten away with it. I started syncing timestamps with neighbor stories. Missing garage door opener? There she was on camera the same night. Registration papers moved? Same week, same car, same person. When you line it all up, the deniability disappears. I asked a few neighbors if they'd be willing to put their experiences in writing. I didn't pressure anyone. I didn't need to. Once people realized someone else had proof, they wanted their voices heard. One couple told me they'd paid over $600 in fines over the past year, just to keep the peace. An elderly man admitted he'd stopped parking his car outside because things kept going missing. Another neighbor confessed that Karen had entered their garage once under the guise of checking a fire hazard. Every story sounded unbelievable on its own. Together, they painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. Karen, meanwhile, was getting bolder. She stopped pretending to ask permission. She taped new notices directly to my door. She left voicemails warning me of escalated enforcement. She told people openly that she was working with federal oversight and that my refusal to cooperate had triggered a review. That was the moment I knew she'd crossed into territory she didn't understand at all. False reports to federal agencies aren't HOA drama. They aren't civil disputes, they're crimes. And when someone puts them in writing repeatedly with names and fabricated authority, they don't need to be tricked into confessing. They do it themselves. I reviewed the actual HOA bylaws next, not Karen's version. The real ones, filed with the county. 5 board members, limited authority, no power to issue fines unilaterally, no vehicle inspections, no impound rights. Nothing remotely close to what Karen claimed. I contacted the HOA president directly, a quiet man who sounded exhausted before I even finished explaining. "We've been wondering where those notices were coming from," he admitted. "People keep calling us angry about fines we didn't issue." They'd been ignoring Karen, hoping she'd burn herself out. Instead, she'd built a parallel system, complete with fake titles and invented enforcement. Avoidance had given her room to escalate. Karen's biggest mistake came the following week. I came home to find another lock on my vehicle. Different model this time. More official looking. Another laminated notice. Another demand for payment. But this time, she didn't just immobilize the car. She waited. She stood on the sidewalk with her clipboard, watching my driveway like she was daring me to challenge her. So I did. I walked over calmly, phone visible in my hand. "Are you claiming this vehicle is impounded?" I asked. "Yes," she said confidently. "Pending investigation. By whom?" "Community safety enforcement. And you're the authority." "Correct." "Do you have documentation that allows you to seize property?" She gestured vaguely at her clipboard. "That's all handled. It was all on video. Her voice, her claims, her certainty. When law enforcement arrived, the difference from the first time was stark. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. The officer removed the device and told her plainly that touching my car again would result in charges. Karen smiled and nodded. Then she waited 2 days and did something far worse. She filed formal complaints, not with the HOA, not with the city, with federal agencies. I found out when my supervisor called me into his office. "Connor," he said, sliding a stack of papers across the desk, "want to explain why a civilian filed ethics complaints against you with 3 different agencies." Karen had accused me of intimidation, obstruction, abuse of authority. She'd attached her fake certificates, her violation notices, and a narrative that cast her as a volunteer targeted by a rogue federal employee. What she didn't realize was that in trying to make herself look legitimate, she documented her crimes in detail. She admitted to entering vehicles, to conducting inspections, to enforcing compliance, to coordinating investigations that didn't exist. My supervisor didn't look angry. He looked almost impressed. "She just handed us a confession," he said. At that point, here was no reason to stop her. The guidance was simple. Let her continue. Collect everything. Ensure there's no ambiguity. Karen took the silence as validation. She escalated again. Late one night, the cameras caught her vandalizing my car. Spray paint across the side, words about federal overreach, warnings to the community. She tried to disable the cameras afterward, not realizing they were backed up off-site. She posted about it online. Photos, explanations, claims of citizen enforcement. The comments were divided. Some people finally realized something was wrong. Others fed her paranoia. Karen responded to all of them, growing more agitated, more self-righteous. The next morning, she came back to my door wearing a different outfit. Dark clothing, a vest with patches she'd clearly ordered online. A badge that didn't mean anything. She told me she'd neutralized surveillance threats and was prepared to escort my family out for community safety. Her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were convinced. That's when the strategy changed from documentation to intervention. I made the call, shared the overnight footage, explained the escalation. The response was immediate. "This can't wait," I was told. "We execute." Karen still thought she was in control. She believed her authority was finally being recognized. She believed she was winning. She agreed to meet the following day to present her findings publicly. She had no idea that every step she'd taken was being tracked, logged, and prepared. And she certainly didn't realize that the next time she put on that vest, it would be the last time she ever played that role. Karen wanted witnesses. That was the one constant in everything she did. Authority, to her, only mattered if it was seen. So when she announced she would be presenting her final report to the community, she made sure everyone knew where and when it would happen. The monthly HOA meeting was already scheduled for Thursday evening at the clubhouse. Karen decided it would be the perfect stage. She sent emails, posted reminders, told neighbors she was finally going to expose what she called ongoing federal interference. She showed up early. By the time I arrived, the room was nearly full. People who had avoided each other for months were suddenly sitting shoulder to shoulder, curiosity outweighing discomfort. Karen stood at the front, arranging papers, adjusting her vest, placing her laminated certificates where everyone could see them. She smiled when she saw me. "This won't take long," she said loudly. "I just need to clarify a few things for the safety of our community." I took a seat, said nothing. When the meeting started, Karen didn't wait for permission. She stood, cleared her throat, and launched into her presentation. Photos of my house, my car, claims about surveillance, warnings about non-compliance. She spoke with absolute certainty, as if repetition alone could make it true. Then she crossed the line one last time. She accused me by name of criminal conduct. That was the signal. The door at the back of the room opened quietly. 2 people stepped in, badges visible but not raised. A third followed, carrying a folder identical to the one Karen clutched so tightly. Karen noticed them too late. "Ma'am," one of them said evenly, "we need you to step away from the podium." She laughed. Actually laughed. "This is exactly what I've been warning you about," she said to the room. "Intimidation tactics. The agent didn't raise his voice. "Karen Ashford," he said, "you are under arrest." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. She froze. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing ready to say. They listed the charges C. Almley, serial unauthorized entry into vehicles, theft, impersonation, false statements to federal agencies, harassment, vandalism, each one backed by evidence she'd created herself. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hands and hit the floor. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "I was authorized." "No," the agent replied. "You weren't." As they let her out, the room stayed silent. Then someone stood up. Then another. Stories spilled out, fines paid, cars entered, threats made. It was all finally said out loud. Outside, the flashing lights reflected off the clubhouse windows. Karen was placed into the back of a vehicle she no longer controlled. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. The charges moved quickly. There was no dramatic trial, no public spectacle beyond the arrest itself. The evidence was overwhelming. Restitution was ordered. Probation followed incarceration. A permanent ban from HOA involvement came with it. Karen's house went up for sale within weeks. The neighborhood changed after that. People talked again. Garage doors stayed open. Kids rode bikes without parents watching the sidewalks. One evening, a neighbor thanked me. I told him it wasn't about winning. It was about stopping something that shouldn't have been allowed to grow. Authority only works when it's real, when it's accountable, when it's checked. Karen thought a vest and a key ring made her powerful. In the end, it was her own certainty that undid her. If you've ever dealt with someone who mistook control for authority, you know how quickly things can spiral when no one pushes back. Sometimes the only way to restore balance is to document, stay calm, and let the truth do the work. And sometimes the person who calls 911 thinking they're in charge is the one who ends up riding away in the back seat.